Hey guys, welcome back to the Prosta English podcast. I'm your host, Nika, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about my recent trip to the UK. When people think about traveling to Great Britain, they usually imagine London, Big Ben, Tower Bridge, Buckingham Palace, the London Eye, and many other famous sites that we know from school. In January, I got my British visa, and in February, my husband and I went to London, of course, London. At that time, my cousin was living there and we stayed at her place. And I shared more about that trip in episode number 24, if I'm not mistaken. So if you are interested in our London adventures, you can check out that episode later. But in June, when my visa was still valid, we decided to go to the UK again. But this time, we visited not London, but the Cornwall region because my cousin and her husband had relocated from London to Cornwall in April, and we were really lucky to explore another part of England. The Cornwall region is often overlooked by tourists from our countries, but at the same time, it's very, very popular among locals. British people go there to hike, do water sports, and enjoy nature. So that's exactly what we did. The weather in June was a bit chilly, around 16, maximum 18 degrees during the day, and it was too cold for sunbathing or even subboarding in the ocean, but at the same time, it was perfect for hiking. One day, my cousin Angelina and her husband Mike had a day off work and they drove us to a beautiful spot. Just imagine you're standing by the ocean where the water is a deep blue and the sky above you is also blue. The sun shines, but it's not hot because a warm wind blows in your face. You walk up the hill, and this hill is covered with the greenest grass you've ever seen. And the higher you go, the more beautiful the view becomes. And there is no one around, just you and nature. And you sing songs loudly and you laugh loudly because no one can hear you. At the top of the hill, you find the perfect spot for a picnic. You take out your snacks from the backpack, fruits, nuts, sandwiches, and chocolate, and enjoy your moment. And you sit without shoes and without socks. You sit barefoot on the soft green grass touching the ground, listening to the sounds of nature and looking at the ocean. And you hardly believe that this is real. This is all happening with you, and it's not just a scene from a movie. And you don't want to speak because no words can express your happiness. You just feel alive, you feel free, and you know that this moment will be added to the list of the happiest days of your life. So, how does it feel? When I was recalling and describing this moment to you, I felt like I traveled back in time and these memories made me smile. And, I'm certain that this day will also warm my heart for many, many years to come. Okay, enough about calm and happy moments. Let me tell you a funny and stressful story from that trip. One day, I had a strong desire to see Land's End. Land's End is the most southwesternly point in Britain. You can check it out on Google Maps and you will understand what I mean. Just type in Land's End. From that point, you will see the endless Atlantic Ocean, and that's it. Nothing else, but the nature is stunning there. Angelina and Mike couldn't join us on that day, so we had to rent a car and we had to drive there ourselves because There was no other transport available. And at first, we were worried that we wouldn't be able to get a car at all because, usually both in the US and in the UK, you need a credit card to rent a car. And it's obligatory to have a credit card. And if you don't have one, they can turn you down, they can say no. And in our case, neither Paul nor I have, in general, a credit card because in Europe, I mean, in Poland, it's not needed. But we really wanted to try, and we thought that maybe we could somehow convince them. When we arrived at the car rental, of course, they asked for a credit card. And we explained our situation and we spoke with the top manager and we provided a lot of personal data. But in the end, we finally got the keys and we were over the moon. But then the funny story happened. The guy who was helping us asked Paul if it was okay if the car was manual, not automatic. And Paul said, "Yeah, sure, I drive a manual car every day in Poland." And we knew that they drive on the left side of the road in the UK. But Paul was fine with that. He was like, "No worries, I will get used to it in like half an hour." But somehow we hadn't thought about the gear stick. Because in regular cars, you change gears with your right hand. But in British cars, you change gears with your left hand. If you drive, you can imagine how inconvenient it is. It's like writing with your left hand when you are right handed and vice versa. You can do it, of course, you can do it, but it's so unusual and it feels unnatural. But the problem wasn't just with the left hand gear stick, but also the tiny roads. Some roads on our way were so narrow that two cars couldn't pass by without one stopping to let the other one go through. And in addition to that, they have also strange roundabouts. Have you ever seen two roundabouts together? We hadn't. And at first we couldn't figure out who had the priority and how to navigate them without crashing into other cars. So, this 2-hour road trip to Land's End was very, very stressful. But in the end, it was definitely worth it because nature there was so gorgeous. And we hiked up hills, we sat on huge stones watching the ocean waves, and we took many, many pictures and we watched rabbits that were hopping around, and we simply enjoyed the moment. As the British would say, it was a lovely day. By the way, when we were going back, Paul was already much, much more confident. He had figured out the roundabouts and also he was more comfortable changing gears with his left hand. That's why the next morning we decided to visit another town before returning the car at 2 p.m. Yeah, I remember that the weather was gloomy that day. The sun was not shining, but we walked by the ocean, we also explored the city, and we bought some souvenirs. Despite these two trips were really awesome. Anyway, I felt relieved when we returned the car because you know how it works. Those car rental services, they are just scammers. They might find some scratches and make you pay like extra money, which can spoil your mood and ruin your day. And in general, this experience was quite pricey, I can say, because renting the car for 24 hours cost 140 euros plus extra 25 euros for insurance. And we also left a 250 euros deposit. Yeah, but luckily we got the €250 back, and we went to celebrate our positive experience at a bar. I often hear people say that they don't need English for traveling. Yeah, in a way, because nowadays we can check into hotels or apartments through self check in. We can also book taxis through apps, and we can order food by pointing at what we want. But there is one thing I cannot imagine traveling without, and this is communication with local people. For me, this is the most exciting part of any trip because internet can provide any information you want about historical facts, art, and etc. But you can never truly experience the local life without talking to people, because by speaking with locals, you can discover good restaurants, good bars. You can discover some hidden places, non touristy attractions, and also learn about culture, traditions, and mentality. Paul and I use like literally any chance to talk to locals. We both love it. But there is one thing you should know about British people. Even though they seem friendly and polite and very open minded, they generally keep distance, and they are not eager to chat in random situations. There are only two places where British people are really open to conversations, and these two places are pubs and gardens. And it's very funny, but this trip really proved that theory. Because, for example, one day we were passing a gorgeous house with a beautiful garden, and there was a man working in the garden. And Paul just randomly complimented him on the garden. And man was so happy. He was so pleased to hear that, and he started speaking with us. But it wasn't just a quick chat, it lasted 30 minutes. He shared his travel experience. He explained why people prefer living in Cornwall over London. And somehow we ended up discussing how our parents pressure us to have kids, saying that it's time to rush because we are getting older and etc. And he said, "Come on, guys, you are still young. Enjoy your life first. I'm 42 and my child is only 2 years old." And I think this is a perfect example of learning how locals think just by talking to them. The second place where we spoke with a local was, of course, a pub. We had already had garden, and this time it was pub. So, as I've already mentioned, after returning the car, we went to celebrate the end of our stressful experience, and there was a man sitting next to us. To be honest, I do not remember how we even started talking, but there was a funny situation connected with him. We shared just like, a couple of phrases, and then he stopped and looked at me in a very strange way. And I asked him, "Is everything fine?" And he replied, "Why do you have an American accent? Do you watch too many American shows?" I laughed and said, "Yeah, maybe. But in reality, I do not watch any British movies or series. I don't know why, but I'm simply not used to watching British ones. I watch only American ones." But I didn't want to say that out loud because he was already disappointed enough. But even though he didn't approve my accent because it wasn't British, I was anyway, pleased to hear that he thought that I had an American accent. Yeah, I was really, really happy to hear that. In addition to exploring a new place, we spent every evening with Angelina and Mike. We talked about life, we also discussed world events and news. We shared our future expectations and etc. In general, my cousin Angelina is a very important person in my life because we spent all our childhood together in Lida in Belarus at our grandmother's place. And we shared the funniest and the brightest moments of our teenage years. And I really appreciate the fact that now, living so far away from each other and seeing each other once in just a couple of years, we remain so close. And our husbands also get along well, which is also very important. So, as you see, this trip wasn't just about exploring England, it was also about appreciating and being thankful for simple things. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode. Actually, I brought some small gifts from the trip and I would like to send them to some of you. So, follow my Instagram and Telegram accounts because I'm gonna share the details on how to get the presents from the UK there. And the links to my social media accounts are in the episode description. I wish all of you to travel as much as possible and to explore our beautiful world. If you want to improve your English and get the most of your trips, I'm here to help you. This fall, my school will offer courses for all levels from beginner to pre intermediate, intermediate, and advanced. And the most active students have already started booking their places at the best price. So if you are interested in studying with us, send me a message on Instagram and I will help you. We will check first of all your level and then select the best program for you. But at the moment, have a lovely day or evening if you were listening to this episode in the evening. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye, guys. Keep in touch.